peanut butter and jelly is really low risk. When you start making sandwiches with meat or cheese or something like that, those really need to be kept cold. The other thing is if you have fresh fruit in the bag, especially cut fruit, those need to be kept cold.
Whether you're packing a sack lunch for work or your child's school lunch, food safety should be the number one concern. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, approximately 1 in 6 Americans, or about 48 million people, get sick each year from foodborne diseases. In addition, 128,000 people are hospitalized each year, and 3,000 die of foodborne diseases each year. Children are the most vulnerable to food poisoning, so it makes sense to take extra precautions when preparing the lunches they take to school. On today's Sound Living, back-to-school food safety tips. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman. K-State Research and Extension food scientist Karen Blakeslee, who also serves as coordinator of the K-State Rapid Response Center, says that packing a safe, healthy lunch involves planning and taking the necessary steps to keep cold foods cold and hot foods hot. Karen, a lot of things to think about as the children go back to school, and one of those is the school lunch. A lot of them will do the school lunch program, but others like to take their own, especially people like me, kind of the picky eaters, maybe more inclined to pack a sack lunch. What are some things that we really, really want to focus on when we talk about a sack lunch? Safety, obviously, has to be number one.
Absolutely, because children are a vulnerable audience when it comes to food safety issues. So making sure that you're packing a safe lunch for them should be first and foremost in your mind. One of the things to think about is where will the child store their lunch when they get it to school? Will it just be in the coat closet or in their desk? That can influence what you pack and how you pack it.
Because that will determine the temperature that it needs to be kept at.
Absolutely. You know, we like to say keep your cold foods cold and keep your hot foods hot. My guess is probably most often you're going to pack a cold lunch, and that's probably the easiest thing to keep at temperature. So if they have access to a refrigerator, that would really be nice, but I doubt all schools have that. So it's up to the parents to pack it safely. Using some kind of insulated bag or container. There's all kinds of lunch boxes out there now. But you also need to put some kind of ice pack in there, whether you use regular ice or refreezable ice packs. Those work really well. They're easy to handle. You don't have to worry about melting ice dripping all over the place. So those work very well to keep foods cold.
They have a number of sizes of those. Do you want to kind of keep that in mind, too, in terms of maybe needing more than one of those?
Yeah, and that's going to depend on the size of the lunch box that you have or lunch bag. They have some small ones. I personally have one that's about a 3x5 size, and then they get bigger from there. Of course, they get heavier, too. So, you know, those small ones will keep a lunch cold up until lunchtime, 3 or 4 hours for sure. The bigger ones will obviously keep things colder longer, but, you've got a heavier amount of stuff to haul around.
I'm thinking maybe another option for that ice pack is freezing either a water bottle or maybe one of the fruit drinks.
Yeah, absolutely. That way it's got double duty. So freeze a water bottle, freeze a juice pack. Those work really well because by the time lunch comes, then they'll be partially thawed out, and then they can drink those with their lunch. And those can be a good nutritious option. Good old water. Those juice packs are usually better than some kind of pop or sugary drink like that. So, yeah, definitely freeze those and use those as an ice pack.
I know one of the problems we had with our kids was the lunch box would make it to school but didn't always make it home, so you might need 1 or 2 backups.
Yeah, that's always a good idea. Those things happen, just like losing a coat or a mitten or something like that along the way. So keep a backup. There's all kinds of options out there.
If you're trying to keep a certain item like a sandwich cold, is it important to have that ice pack as close to that food source as possible?
Yeah, it's really a good idea to do that. You pack your sandwich in a plastic bag or some type of reclosable container and then put the ice pack, whatever it is, right next to it. That way that cold temperature is right next to that product that needs to be kept cold.
Normally a refrigerator somewhere around 40 degrees. Possible to keep your lunch pail that cool?
Yeah, those keep things pretty cool. So, they need to keep it closed up until it's time to eat. So make sure that whatever kind of bag or box you're using is pretty tight when you seal it up and send it off with your child to school.
We think about peanut butter probably being one of the more safe options for a sandwich.
Peanut butter and jelly is really low risk. When you start making sandwiches with meat or cheese or something like that, those really need to be kept cold. The other thing is if you have fresh fruit in the bag, especially cut fruit, those need to be kept cold. Whole fruits like a banana or a whole apple, those are a lower concern than if they were cut up already.
You also maybe might need to add something to like a cut-up apple to keep it from turning brown?
Exactly. Dip them in some lemon juice or use ascorbic acid. There's fruit protectors out there that have ascorbic acid in it, and those work very well to keep the color from changing. Packing it in some type of airtight container will also help keep the fruit from turning brown.
Are there some other things that maybe they would want to possibly even avoid putting into a kid's sack lunch? I'm kind of thinking of leftovers. Can that be a problem?
That could be a problem because, if it's something that was hot, served hot, you kept it cold, it probably needs to be reheated again. Chances are there's really no way for your child to reheat that somewhere. I know there's insulated containers for hot food. The trick is getting those hot to start with. Fill those with hot water so they get good and warm. And then be sure to heat the food up to at least 165 degrees so that you've got it good and hot before you put it into the container. If at all possible, save those kinds of leftovers to eat at home instead of taking those to school.
In terms of putting the lunch together, does it matter how you throw things into the lunchbox?
Well, first and foremost, always wash your hands before you start making the lunch. If you make it the night before, save that towards, after you've had your meal that evening, and then concentrate on making the lunches. And then whatever needs to be refrigerated, keep those in the refrigerator. And that'll also help keep the lunch cold the next day when they're off to school. But first and foremost, wash your hands. Make sure you've got a clean area where you're prepping the sandwich or whatever it is you're taking. Washing your hands can eliminate so many issues, so be sure to do that. Use good, clean surfaces. If you're using a cutting board, make sure there wasn't any raw meat on there before you make your sandwich. Use a good, clean cutting board in between those things. And then, as I said, if it's got to be kept cold, put it in the refrigerator, and then you can pack it into the lunchbox the next day.
A lot of times people will do the sack lunch because they think it's going to cut down on costs. But there's also been some studies that show if you're not careful in how you put that sack lunch together, you buy a lot of the prepackaged things, all of a sudden the cost of that meal has really gone up once you add each individual item up. So people need to pay attention at the store as well.
Absolutely. Look for sales. There's always something on sale. I think another fun thing to do is take your child with you and have them help you go shopping. That way they can pick out some things that they might enjoy. Always scour the ads before you go. Many grocery stores have their bonus cards. You can get discounts that way. Look for coupons on those. There's apps that you can download coupons to your card number, and then you don't have to think about carrying around coupons. It'll automatically come off when you buy the product. The other thing is, if you're buying produce, buy things that are in season. They're typically a little less expensive when there's larger amount of in-season produce, and it's good fresh produce too, and a wide range of options on that. The other thing is compare brands and package sizes too. That can make a difference on what the final cost can be. Always look on the store shelves for the price per ounce or whatever quantity it is for that package. So do some shopping, do some price comparisons, and have fun going to the grocery store. Have your kids, help you do the shopping.
And sometimes it is better to buy in bulk and repackage it yourself in some of those Ziploc bags?
Yeah, in some cases you can do that. And then you can have it already packaged up and you can throw together a quick lunch in the morning if you're running behind. That way you've got it ready to go. Carrots, for example. You could buy a big bag of carrots. When you get home, divide them up and put them in little reclosable plastic bags and then stick them in the refrigerator, and then you can just quickly put a lunch together with some crunchy carrots.
That really is one of the things that parents should keep in mind, is making sure that this is a healthy lunch and not just a bunch of things that you threw in the bag.
Yeah, always keep nutrition in mind. You know, if you're making a sandwich, use a whole grain, whole wheat type bread, or even a whole wheat tortilla instead of a plain tortilla if you're making a wrap. Good fresh produce, low sodium meats can help your sodium intake. Just change a few things here and there, and that way you've got a good, healthy, nutritious meal.
We're probably thinking primarily of cold foods to begin the school year. As the year goes on and we get into November, December, January, we might be thinking about some hot foods. That gets a little bit more complicated simply because they don't always have access to places to heat things, so you have to have either a thermos or some other type of container that'll keep it warm.
Yeah, that makes things a little tricky. And if you do pack that lunch for your child, a hot lunch like that, make sure they know that it is a hot lunch. And to be careful when they open that container so that they don't spill it, or hopefully it'll not be too hot that it'll burn them, but still they need to know that it is a hot soup or something like that. Again, you just make sure that it's some kind of container that is going to keep it hot. Test it out. You know, just put some hot water in there and see how long it stays hot. You know, it needs to be kept above 140 degrees. So put some boiling water in there, let it set for 4 or 5 hours, and then open it up and take the temperature of it. See what it's doing. See if it's really going to do the job, because you want to make sure that's going to be a safe product.
And because allergies are such a concern now, we want to have that conversation with our children that if you take a peanut butter sandwich or peanut butter cookies, that you're not doing any swapping.
Yeah, that's always a pretty risky idea. I know it's fun for kids to switch things up a little bit. They see somebody else's lunch and like, ooh, I want to try that. But again, you know, they need to be well aware if they do have any kind of food allergies that they need to not do that. That's probably the main reason why they're bringing their own lunch to school. So that needs to be their lunch, and that's what they need to eat. Or even offering it to somebody, a friend at school. Maybe that friend has a food allergy, and that could be a problem. So just be very, very careful about that. And, you know, good sit down, chat with them, and give them a little education. This is why you are packing your lunch and why you have these foods.
I also used to kind of quiz my kids when they would come home and ask them about something that was in their lunch just to see if they were really checking their lunch, paying attention, and more importantly, eating their lunch, because parents really have no idea whether the lunch is being eaten or not.
Yeah, exactly. And that's probably one of the things parents probably are more concerned about, whether they're really eating their lunch as opposed to whether it's really safe to eat. So ask them. You know, find out, did they really eat that lunch or did they share it with somebody? And what are they bringing back home? The other thing is, you know, the packaging, whatever kind of packaging you use, if it's reusable, like a plastic container or something like that, wash it well. Any kind of plastic bags, I would just throw those away so that you're reducing any risk with that.
And again, the main thing, cold food's cold, hot food's hot. That will prevent a lot of problems.
Oh, absolutely. So use those ice packs, you know, to keep those cold foods at temperature. And then if you are packing something hot, make sure those containers are going to keep the food at a hot temperature.
And as always, Karen, you have a lot of information out on the web. People can go to the website and find out a lot more about food safety.
Yeah, we have Extension Food Safety website, and the website address is www.ksre.ksu.edu/food safety.
That's K-State Research and Extension food scientist Karen Blakeslee. She also serves as coordinator of the K-State Rapid Response Center, which has food safety and food preparation tips on its website, www.rrc.kstate.edu. You can also find more information at county and district extension offices and on the Extension Food Safety website, www.kstate.edu/food safety. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman, and this is the K-State Radio Network.